Ministers have moments where they go through discouragement or they feel depressed as servants of God. This includes pastors, missionaries, and anyone who has given their life in service of the Lord. This is not uncommon, especially in this time and era that we live. Today in this video, I wanted to discuss some reasons and some possible encouragement and ways to overcome. So let's get into it. And to note, this goes for ministers or anyone who's felt called by God in any capacity. So I wanted to talk about discouragement today and not depression itself, because I think people who are discouraged move into that state of depression, but they start with discouragement. Basically put, I think the discouragement comes before the depression. So I want to start with a question: why discouragement in ministers, and what does it look like? Discouragement can be produced in the following forms, just to name a few. There's a feeling of inadequacy, comparison, some sort of loss or death, failure, or loneliness. In my opinion, these 5 things can sum up the reason for discouragement in a minister. As ministers, when we feel as if we cannot reach the level that God has called us to, we feel discouraged. When we look around and say, oh, that person has their ministry all together, they're running smoothly, and I can barely keep mine together, discouragement can set in. When bad things happen out of our control, like a loss or a death, or when we fail, like a personal sin, or we don't meet a goal that we thought we should reach, discouragement can set in. I'm reminded of this scripture when I think about discouragement, and it's in 1 Kings chapter 19, and it's verse 4 through 7. And it reads in verse 4 of chapter 19, and it says, "Then he went alone into the wilderness, traveling all day. He sat down under a solitary broom tree and prayed that he might die. 'I have had enough, Lord,' he said. 'Take my life, for I am no better than my ancestors who have already died.' Then he laid down and slept under the broom tree. But as he was sleeping, an angel touched him and told him, 'Get up and eat.' He looked around, and there beside his head was some bread baked on hot stones and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and laid down again. Then the angel of the Lord came again and touched him and said, 'Get up and eat some more, or the journey ahead will be too much for you.'" So the backstory is Elijah had found himself on the run after being an obedient prophet and one of the only few, and he was doing what God had called him to do. He asked the Lord to take his life, words that were a chilling example of discouragement. And what does God do in this situation? He gives Elijah food and rest so he can continue on the path that God had called him to go on. And ultimately, this speaks to God's character. He takes care of his children, those who choose to follow his voice. When we feel discouraged, I believe God has already provided a way of escape for us. Number 1, remember who God is, who you are, and that God has called you and has all that you need. Number 2, rest and care for yourself. If we continue in Elijah's story, God goes on to remind Elijah of who God is, who Elijah is, and what God has called Elijah to do. As it reads in 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 15 through 17, and it says, "Then the Lord told him, 'Go back the same way you came and travel to the wilderness of Damascus. When you arrive there, anoint Hazael to be king of Aram, then anoint Jehu, grandson of Nimshi, to be king of Israel, and anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, from the town of Abel-Meholah, to replace you as my prophet.'" These words serve as strength to Elijah because he's no longer focused on all the things and the people around him. He's focused on the mission and who God is. Number 2, God gave Elijah some food and a nap. As ministers, we have to learn to take a break, and a break does mean a break. So for pastors, this may mean multiple vacations or even a sabbatical. And for missionaries, the same. We need to take time off. This may even look like times where we're not working, we're just praying, seeking the Lord, and just resting in Him. And I've heard many ministers, pastors, and missionaries saying this is where God has given new direction. So either way, it's just super important that we rest and be refreshed. We cannot move forward with what God has called us to do if we're too tired or if we just feel burnout. We need rest and healing to be able to continue forward. So this is my encouragement for you today. Remember who God is, who He has called you to be and take some time to rest. God has called you to your position. Remembering it and resting are necessary for success along the path. God bless you guys.